The Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Concordat hung suspended in the void of space, a massive crystalline structure that reflected the light of 1,000 stars. As I, Ambassador Krillax of the Velutarian Empire, settled into my hover seat, I couldn't help but notice the empty section where the human delegates should have been. Not that anyone expected them to show up. Not after what happened on New Montana. "Order! Order in the chamber!" High Chancellor Vexetor's voice boomed through the cavernous space, his forearms raised in what we'd all come to recognize as a gesture of authority. "We are gathered here to discuss the incident involving the human response to the Drachnid operation." I suppressed a laugh, earning a glare from Ambassador Patok of the Unified Hives. Incident, they called it. When a Drachnid battle fleet gets turned into space debris, apparently that's just an incident. The humans, Vexter continued, his scaled skin shifting from green to a worried purple, have issued what they're calling a final notice of grievance. Would Ambassador Krillax please read the communication for the Council? Wonderful. They always make me do the uncomfortable parts. Probably because my species is one of the few that can actually pronounce human words without translator assistance. I pulled up the holographic document and cleared my throat sacs. "To the Galactic Concordat and all associated species," I began, trying to keep my voice steady. "For 300 standard cycles, humanity has participated in good faith within your governmental framework. We have endured trade restrictions that crippled our outer colonies. We have watched as you carved up our expansion zones. We have suffered your protective scientific oversight that has held back our research and development." The chamber erupted in murmurs. I raised my voice. "But the unprovoked attack on New Montana crosses a line that cannot be uncrossed. You have mistaken our patience for weakness, our diplomacy for fear, our restraint for limitation." I paused, noting how the council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "Consider this humanity's resignation from the Concordat, effective immediately. Any species that stands between us and justice for New Montana will be considered hostile. You have 24 standard hours to choose your position. Choose wisely." The chamber exploded into chaos. Trade Minister Zilfra of the Commerce Worlds fainted, her crystalline form tinkling as her attendants caught her. The hive representatives began their agitated clicking, and through it all, High Chancellor Vexetor just sat there, all 4 hands clasped together, his scales now a sickly white. "Surely," Ambassador Patok's clicking voice cut through the chaos, "the humans understand their position. They are one species among hundreds. Their military power is fraction of the combined fleet." I couldn't help myself. I laughed. Everyone turned to stare at me, and I realized I would have to explain what they still didn't understand. "My esteemed colleagues," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm, "has it occurred to any of you that the humans waited until now to send this message? That perhaps they've spent these 300 cycles preparing for exactly this moment?" The silence that followed was deafening. The council chamber's silence stretched uncomfortably as I pulled up historical records on my neural display. Not that I needed them. Every diplomat worth their salt knew the 3 breaking points that led us here. We just chose to ignore them, like fools dancing on the edge of a neutron star. "Perhaps," I suggested, standing up from my hover seat, "we should review how we arrived at this catastrophic moment, starting with the Perseus embargo?" High Chancellor Vexetor nodded wearily. Even he couldn't deny the stupidity of that particular decision. Officially, the embargo was meant to protect developing species in the Perseus Arm from, quote, aggressive human economic practices. In reality, it was the commerce worlds protecting their monopoly on quantum crystalline computing. The humans submitted 17 separate proposals to modify the embargo, I continued, watching my colleagues squirm. Each one more reasonable than the last. But no, Trade Minister Zilfra and her precious commerce worlds needed their profit margins. A harsh laugh escaped my throat sacs. Then came the mass starvation on New Montana, New Texas, and 5 other human colonies cut off from their supply lines. The humans requested emergency aid. We voted no. They requested temporary exemptions. We voted no. They requested permission to relocate their citizens. We voted no. Ambassador Patok clicked his mandibles irritably. The law must be upheld. The law? I cut him off. Let's talk about the Beta Carina incident then, when the combined fleet declared human expansion zones as protected sanctuaries for space-dwelling lithoids. Strange how those same lithoids were cleared out 5 cycles later for Drachnid colony ships. The Drachnid representative, Supreme Commander Raksutil, rose from his seat, bioluminescent patches flaring. Those accusations were never proven. Oh, sit down, Raksutil, I snapped. We all saw the footage. Humans had terraformed 3 planets in that sector, invested 60 cycles of work, built cities, established farms. Then suddenly, your survey ships discover critically endangered crystal breathers in that exact sector. Please. The chamber erupted in angry shouts and accusations. I let them rage for a moment before triggering the sonic dampeners in my section. In the artificial quiet, I accessed more records. But the scientific censorship, I continued once they'd settled, that was our masterpiece of diplomatic idiocy. When humans developed their first functional quantum consciousness transfer system, what did we do? The Science Council, in its infinite wisdom, declared it too dangerous for an immature species and demanded they abandon the research. High Chancellor Vexator's scales shifted to a deep blue of remembered shame. The technology had significant risks. The technology worked, I shouted, my throat sacs fully inflated. It worked better than anything our species had developed. But instead of collaboration, we chose suppression. When Dr. Elena Martinez refused to destroy her research, the Science Council sent in enforcement units. 10 human scientists died in the raid. The newer council members looked shocked. This part usually got glossed over in the official histories. The humans went quiet after that, I said, my voice softening. Too quiet. They accepted our restrictions, followed our rules, smiled during diplomatic functions. But if any of you had bothered to really look, I gestured at the holographic displays showing human space. Their shipping manifests never quite matched their production numbers. Their energy consumption was always slightly higher than reported. Their colonies kept growing despite the restrictions. Trade Minister Zilphara, recovered from her fainting spell, raised a crystalline appendage. Are you suggesting they've been systematically deceiving us? No, I replied, sinking back into my hover seat. I'm stating it as fact. Humans have a saying, hope for the best, plan for the worst. For 300 cycles, we've given them nothing but the worst. And I guarantee you, they've been planning accordingly. The chamber fell silent again as the implications sank in. All those years of restrictions, vetoes, and suppression. We thought we were containing a potentially dangerous species. Instead, we were just giving them time to prepare, time to build, time to plan. And now, with the ashes of New Montana still cooling, we'd finally pushed them past their breaking point. The holographic display in the center of the council chamber flickered to life, showing the ruins of New Montana. Even now, 3 days after the Drachnid attack, fires still burned across the continent-spanning wheat fields. The massive agricultural domes lay shattered, their broken shells scattered across the landscape like the bones of ancient creatures. Play the footage, I demanded, my voice rough with emotion. Most of my colleagues flinched. They knew what was coming. The recording began. New Montana's orbital defense platforms hung silent in space, powered down as required by Concordat law. The Drachnid fleet dropped out of hyperspace. 47 capital ships strong. No warning, no demands, just immediate, overwhelming force. Stop, Supreme Commander Raksutil protested. We all know what happened. No, I snarled. You will watch. You will all watch. The Drachnid ships opened fire. Their energy weapons carved molten scars across the planet's surface. Kinetic bombardment rounds punched through the atmospheric shields, striking cities with the force of small nuclear weapons. 7 million humans died in the first hour. But that wasn't what broke us. What broke us was the agricultural domes. "Notice," I said, highlighting specific ships in the display, how the Drachnid fleet specifically targeted food production facilities. Not military installations, not industrial centers. They deliberately destroyed the means to feed a population. The recording continued. Emergency beacons lit up the night side of the planet as civilian ships tried to escape. The Drachnid fleet methodically shot them down. Not all of them. Just enough to prove they could. Just enough to send a message. 17 hours, I continued, my throat sacs constricting with barely contained rage. For 17 hours, human ships across 3 sectors received distress calls from New Montana. Calls we were legally forbidden from answering due to the Concordate's quarantine protocols. High Chancellor Vexeter raised all 4 hands. The protocols exist to prevent conflict escalation. The protocols, I cut him off, exist to protect aggressors like the Drachnids from consequences. But here's what you all seem to have missed. The humans obeyed those protocols. For 17 hours, while their people died, they obeyed your laws. I switched the display to current sensor readings.
Then exactly 18 hours after the first shot was fired, every human military vessel in known space activated previously unknown drive systems and vanished.
The chamber erupted in concerned murmurs. Ambassador Potok's antennae twitched nervously. Vanished where? That's the interesting part, I replied, unable to keep a note of dark admiration from my voice. According to our best sensor data, they didn't go anywhere. They just stopped being detectable. 5,000 ships just gone, like they'd never existed. Trade Minister Zilfara's crystalline form vibrated with anxiety. Impossible! Our detection systems are being jammed by technology we didn't know existed, I finished for her. Just like we didn't know about their fleet's true capabilities. Just like we didn't know about their actual industrial capacity. Just like we didn't know about the massive military installation buried 2 kilometers under New Montana's surface. That got their attention. I triggered another holographic display, this one showing deep scan readings of New Montana, taken just before all our sensor platforms in the system mysteriously failed. See that? I pointed to a massive structure beneath the planet's crust. While we were all busy congratulating ourselves on keeping humanity contained, they built a fortress under our noses. One that survived the bombardment. One that, according to our last readings, was launching ships. But that's not the worst part, I continued, saving my biggest revelation for last. The worst part is what happened 6 hours ago. Would anyone like to guess? Silence filled the chamber. I let it stretch, watching my colleagues squirm. Every human in known space disappeared, not just military personnel, every human, trading posts, diplomatic missions, research stations, civilian contractors, all empty. 3 billion humans across 700 systems, gone in an instant. The implications hit the Council like a plasma blast. High Chancellor Vexetor's scales turned almost white. That's not possible. The energy requirements alone. Quantum consciousness transfer, I said quietly. Remember that technology we forced them to abandon? Turns out they didn't abandon it. They perfected it. And now we have no idea where humanity's population has gone, where their fleet is, or what they're planning. I stood up, looking each council member in their various sensory organs. But we do know one thing. In the last transmission from New Montana, before the Drachnid fleet opened fire, Governor Chen said something to her people. The humans have been kind enough to let us keep that recording. I played the clip. Governor Chen's voice, calm despite the approaching fleet, filled the chamber. Remember the Alamo? None of our xenohistorians could explain the reference, I said, watching comprehension dawn on my colleagues' faces. Until now. It's from human military history. It means they're about to make someone pay dearly for a mistake. The chamber's emergency alerts chose that moment to start blaring. Reports flooded in from across known space, human ships appearing out of nowhere, strategic targets hit with surgical precision, and one message broadcast on all frequencies. Humanity thanks the Galactic Concordate for its patience. Now please sit back and observe how warfare should be conducted. The Council Chamber's emergency alerts wouldn't stop screaming. Red warning holograms filled the air as reports poured in from across Concordate space. Supreme Commander Raxutil kept barking orders into his neural link, his bioluminescent patches pulsing with increasing panic. Drachnid Fleet Base Omega-7. Gone. Just gone. His voice cracked. 300 ships, 50,000 personnel. The humans hit it with some kind of weapon that turned everything within a 50-kilometer radius into elementary particles. I finished for him, checking my own updates. Yes, they call it the Manhattan Protocol. Apparently they've had that particular surprise waiting for 3 decades. The Drachnid commander's facial tentacles writhed in distress. But our shields can't stop a weapon that changes the fundamental forces holding matter together, I interrupted, not bothering to hide my satisfaction. Really makes you wonder what else they developed while pretending to follow our technology restrictions, doesn't it? High Chancellor Vexator's scales had turned an interesting shade of grey I'd never seen before. The combined fleet is mobilizing. We have numerical superiority. We have... A new alert cut him off. The massive holographic display showed the Drachnid home system, or rather what was left of it, the mighty defense ring of 50,000 automated weapons platforms, now floating debris. The supposedly impregnable planetary shield, disabled by a computer virus that somehow bypassed every security measure. "Oh, look," I commented dryly. "Humanity remembered your tricks from the Beta Carina incident. How thoughtful of them to return the favor." Ambassador Potok's mandibles clacked rapidly. "But the human fleet can't possibly. They don't have the numbers to be everywhere at once." I brought up another tactical display. "They don't need to be. See these patterns? Classic human military doctrine. Vertical envelopment, tactical mobility, force multiplication. They're not trying to hold territory. They're destroying strategic targets and disappearing before we can respond." The chamber shook. Not a simulation this time, a real impact. I checked the external cameras. The commercial world's prize defense fleet was engaging 3 human warships directly above the council chamber. The humans were winning. Fascinating, I mused, watching the battle. Their ships are using maneuvers that should tear them apart. The energy readings are off the charts. It's like they're not bound by the same laws of physics we are. Impossible. Trade Minister Zilfara's crystalline form resonated with fear. Our scientists assured us that humans couldn't possibly advance beyond our technological level, I laughed. Did it ever occur to you that they let us think that? That every advancement they showed us was carefully calculated to keep us complacent? Another explosion lit up space above us. One of the human ships had just copied itself. Then both copies copied themselves. The commercial world's fleet was now facing 12 identical warships instead of 3. Quantum duplication, I explained to my stunned colleagues. Another technology we told them was too dangerous to develop. I'm starting to sense a pattern here. Supreme Commander Raxutil suddenly went rigid, his neural link buzzing with priority transmissions. "The human fleet. His voice failed. "Let me guess," I said, checking my own updates. "They just appeared in every major system simultaneously. Military bases, shipyards, command centers, all under attack at the exact same moment." The council chamber fell silent, except for the wail of alarms and the distant sound of battles. I stood up, straightening my diplomatic robes. "You know what the really interesting part is?" I looked around at my terrified colleagues. "They're being selective, precise. Only military targets. Only species that supported the Drachnids. They're not even blocking civilian traffic." High Chancellor Vexator found his voice. "They're showing restraint?" "No," I corrected him. "They're showing us exactly how much restraint they've been practicing for the past 300 cycles. And what happens when that restraint finally runs out?" The next 6 hours in the council chamber felt like watching a masterclass in warfare. Trade Minister Zilfara had shattered herself in panic an hour ago when the humans broadcast their next message. Not with weapons or threats, but with music. "What is this noise?" Supreme Commander Raksutil demanded, his tentacles curling in agitation. "Flight of the Valkyries," I answered, recognizing the ancient human battle song. "They're broadcasting it on all frequencies while they dismantle our fleets. Apparently they have a sense of humor." The tactical displays told a story that none of us wanted to read. The proud Drachnid armada, reduced to scattering like prey animals. The Commerce World's defense grid, turned against their own ships by human cyber warfare. The Hive Cluster's mighty spawning fleets now drifting in space, their crews seemingly asleep. How? Ambassador Patok's mandibles wouldn't stop twitching. How are they predicting our every move? I pulled up another report, laughing despite myself. Remember all those human servants in our diplomatic corps? The ones we thought were just cheap labor? Turns out they've been cataloguing our military response patterns for generations. The chamber rocked again as another battle unfolded nearby. This time, I noticed something odd about the human tactics. They're herding us, I realized, watching the pattern emerge. Every retreat route leads to a prepared ambush. They mapped out this entire campaign before firing the first shot. High Chancellor Vexeter's scales had settled into a permanent shade of grey. The combined fleet is reporting strange malfunctions. Ships shutting down, weapons failing. Quantum virus, I explained, reviewing the data. They infected our networks years ago, laying dormant, gathering data, waiting for the signal. When New Montana burned, they activated their trap. Another alert. This time a message appeared on every screen in the chamber. Simple text, no audio. Check your calendars. The confusion lasted only moments before understanding hit. Today's date on the human calendar, April 1st, April Fool's Day. They'd timed their revenge to coincide with their ancient holiday of pranks and tricks. "These humans," Raksutil muttered. "They turned war into theatre." "No," I corrected him. "They turned your slaughter of their people into a lesson. Look at the battle footage. Every human ship broadcasts their target's crimes before attacking. They're not just winning, they're documenting their justice." The displays showed more human ships appearing from nowhere, using tactics that defied conventional physics. Some phased through solid matter, others manipulated time itself, arriving at their targets before they launched their attacks. "That's impossible," one of the junior ambassadors whispered. "The energy requirements alone." "They solved cold fusion 40 cycles ago," I revealed, enjoying the shocked gasps. "Kept that quiet too, along with quantum tunneling, temporal mechanics, and about a dozen other technologies we thought were theoretical." A new tactical assessment flashed across my neural link. The Drachnid home fleet, pride of their empire, had just surrendered unconditionally. The Commerce World's defense forces followed suit minutes later. The dominoes were falling exactly as humanity planned. "You know what's truly terrifying?" I asked the stunned council. "This isn't even their full force. Long-range scans suggest most of their fleet is still waiting in whatever pocket dimension they've been hiding in." Supreme Commander Raksutil slumped in his hover seat. How long have they been planning this?" "Since the first trade restriction," I said quietly. "Every insult, every restriction, every diplomatic slight. They remembered them all, built their response one piece at a time, created redundancies we never imagined." The chamber's main screen lit up with a new message from the human fleet. This time accompanied by another Earth song, something called the Imperial March. "We're not going to win this, are we?" High Chancellor Vexeter asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Win?" I shook my head. "Chancellor, we lost this war 300 cycles ago. We just didn't know it until today." 1 month after what humans now call April Fool's War, I stood in the rebuilt council chamber. The changes were impossible to miss. The Drachnid seats sat empty, their empire now under human oversight. The Commerce World section had been reduced to a single chair, and in the centre, where the High Chancellor's platform once floated, stood a simple wooden podium. Admiral Maya Rodriguez stepped up to that podium, her dress uniform gleaming under the starlight. No weapons, no guards, just quiet confidence. "The terms are non-negotiable," she announced, her voice carrying that peculiar human mix of warmth and steel. "But they are, we think, fair." I watched my fellow ambassadors as she outlined humanity's demands. No more technology restrictions, no more artificial trade barriers, no more interference with human expansion. Simple terms that would have prevented this whole disaster if we'd offered them 3 centuries ago. "You're not demanding reparations?" Trade Minister Zilfra asked, her crystalline form still showing stress fractures from her earlier shattering. Admiral Rodriguez smiled. Not the diplomatic smile we were used to from humans, a real one. "Your functioning economies serve our interests better than your bankrupted ones. We're not here for revenge. We're here for change." Supreme Commander Raxutil, now the last of the Drachnid High Command, raised his tentacles. "And our military forces?" "Will be limited to defensive capabilities only," Rodriguez replied. "You can keep your patrol fleets, but the next species that launches an unprovoked attack will find their entire military infrastructure turned into a quantum physics experiment. Again." I couldn't help but notice how the Admiral's hand briefly touched a small medal on her chest. New Montana Service Cross. She'd lost family there, I realized. Yet here she stood, offering peace. "There is one more thing," Rodriguez continued, triggering a holographic display. "We're establishing a new research initiative, open to all species. No restrictions, no censorship, pure science, pure cooperation." The chamber buzzed with surprised murmurs. High Chancellor Vexator's scales shifted to a cautious green. "You would share your advanced technology?" "Share? No." Rodriguez shook her head. "We're offering you the chance to develop it yourselves, with guidance. Think of it as a galactic scholarship program." I understood then what humanity had planned. They weren't creating an empire. They were building a school. "The universe is bigger than our petty power games," Rodriguez continued. "There are threats out there that will require all of us working together. Real threats, the kind that make our recent unpleasantness look like a children's game." She gestured to the stars visible through the chamber's crystal walls. "Humanity didn't develop all this technology just to win a war. We developed it because we looked into the dark between stars and saw things coming, things that should scare you a lot more than we do." The chamber fell silent. I noticed how every ambassador suddenly found themselves staring into space, wondering what humanity had seen out there that drove them to such lengths. "So," Rodriguez concluded, "you have a choice. Join us in preparing for the real fight or stay locked in your comfortable ignorance. But understand this. We won't let anyone hold back progress anymore. The universe doesn't care about our politics or our pride. It only respects preparation and unity." As the Admiral stepped down from the podium, I couldn't help but laugh. My colleagues turned to stare at me. 300 cycles, I explained, wiping moisture from my throat sacs. We spent 300 cycles trying to contain humanity because we feared what they might become. And in doing so, we forced them to become exactly what we feared, but better than we imagined. Admiral Rodriguez paused on her way out. "You know, Ambassador Krillax, there's an old human saying, 'Be careful what you wish for, you might get it.'" "And what did we wish for?" I asked. She smiled that terrifyingly genuine smile again. "You wished for humanity to learn its place in the galaxy. We did. Turns out that place is at the front of the class, teaching the rest of you how to survive what's coming." As she left, I looked around at my fellow ambassadors and saw the same realization on all their faces. We had tried to play teachers to humanity, never realizing we were the ones who needed schooling. The stars seemed a little darker that day, but for the first time in centuries, we weren't facing that darkness alone.